Oh, are live. We are
I just
live.
got my notification from Substack. That's hilarious. Okay.
It's notifying you that you are on live.
Yeah, that I'm on live, even though I have do not disturb, but we know how that works. Substack's like, we don't care. We're gonna
We don't
disturb you
care.
in.
I'm gonna let you know. Oh my gosh. Hey everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Nicole, and this is the first episode of Real Stories, Whole Women, Transformative Leadership, Leading Through the Cracks. And what that is powerful conversations with women about how the cracks and the brokenness and just the transitions and life, how it impacts our ability to show up, how it impacts our capacity, and what we can do to be loving and supportive of one another and show up not only for ourselves, but for each other. And our first episode is with the lovely Nicole Lee. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you, beautiful Nicole and Nicole. Woo! Thank you so much for having me, love.
You are so welcome. I am so thankful that you said yes and you've given me some of your time today. Um, Today we are talking about our episode is called When Grief Hits.
Mm,
And we know, you and I both know from our own lives how much grief has been um, not only impactful but very pivotal
hmm
in our lives, and we know that it's a topic that is sometimes hard to for people to really delve into.
hmm
And I wanted to create this space just to be a safe space and for us to really be able to share and just not only our story but things we've learned and ways that we can help support other people. Maybe they'll hear something from our lives, our story, our interaction with each other that will be a blessing to them and help them in this journey we call life. So
Yes, and I'm
that
so grateful to you and creating this container and us co-creating around this, because the one thing that you and I both agree is, though grief is universal, it is very personal, and the more conversations we have, I think it starts to expand individuals' view of grief, right? Which also sometimes gives us permission to create those opportunities within ourselves. So I just thank you for whatever dropped in your heart to surrender to this call and make it happen, literally, as part of the mission and movement of helping women and really humanity heal, right, around this particular topic. So I appreciate being in community with you.
Thank you. You're welcome. It's such an honor to have you. Those of you that don't know Nicole, she is an amazing speaker, but even more than that, just a facilitator for people, a facilitator of healing, of safe spaces, of renewal. That's how I see you.
Thank you, beautiful. I receive it all. I
That's how
receive how you see me
that's how I
so
see you.
much.
That's how I see you. And as I said, this series is something that I'm going to be doing every Monday. I started with grief. It just kind of worked out that that's how our schedules worked out, when we
hmm
were talking about this. But the more I thought about it, it's to me, it's so powerful just in my life to start with
hmm
grief because grief has shattered me in pieces, and it really almost took me out, like, out of my mind, you know what I'm
hmm
saying? Like, it really shifted me and altered kind of the trajectory of my life, and, it's just been, I haven't told all the pieces of my story, but I know that, um there's so much healing that has come to me, and I want, like you said, grief is so personal, and I think us having these conversations does allow for people to be able to see themselves in our stories, but but also look at themselves and try to expand that, and
Mhm.
how can it look for them? It doesn't have to
Mhm.
look like it does for me or you, but what can we say that can be that spark of healing for someone else? So, Nicole, no further
Yes.
ado, I'd love for you to share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your grief journey. However,
Yeah. Thank you so much. So, I'd say I serve women who are purpose-driven women who are navigating a life-altering loss or life transition, which is typically tied to a loss, and, help see the power in that pain to then transform, transmute, or just really take it to the next level of them living in a more what I call a liberated life, right? And so what often happens is we know that the grief, the sadness, whatever's tied to those life transitions can be so heavy and can be paralyzing. And sometimes it can create a bit of sense of bondage. And so what I desire in the work that I do is to actually find the freedom in it, to not only find the lessons, the meaning and purpose, but to also find those pockets of opportunities to free yourself perhaps of other things that you didn't even realize that you were in bondage of, right? To then see it as this acceleration point or expansion point in your life. And that's what the liberated life is about. And it really aligns to my story in my life as it relates to loss and grief. So, I was not one who was delving into this work until my mother died. So, I mean, I've had people that I've lost. I've had situations that I've grieved, but the depth of me understanding grief, the depth of me feeling it in my mind, body, and spirit wasn't until I lost my mother in 2018. And my mother was diagnosed with cancer in May of 2018, and she died September 22nd, 2018. So I went from having this bold, amazing mother, right? My best friend, totally fine, right? And I know that many people can relate to this. Things are literally fine one day, and literally your life is turned upside down the next day or the next hour, the next moment, right? And that's basically what happened to me. My mother gave me a phone call. She says, I'm going into the emergency room. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I'm going to die. Like she's literally saying this. I'm in Atlanta. She's in Detroit. I get there. I'm grateful that I was privileged that I could actually get on a plane on the same day and be there with my mother, which I also have recognized is a privilege and luxury, right? That many people do not have. Um, and within days, my mother was diagnosed. And then, as I shared, within months, she was gone. I had the privilege and honor to be with my mother through that transition, which again, many people don't have, right? And so I was with my mother when she took her last breath. Now, in that, literally my heart was broken, but I also say my soul was awakened. Now, I didn't realize that it was awakened in that moment, but this is in right reflection and knowing where I am today. And I share that because one thing around grief that sometimes isn't talked about is it is a conflict of emotions and feelings, right? I had elements of relief that my mother wasn't suffering, but I was also grieving that she was gone. Right. My heart was broken, but I felt something was starting to emerge inside of me. And so through that cycle, I was just trying to navigate my way. It wasn't really until about 2020, in the midst of COVID, Black Lives Matter, I had started doing some self discovery work, some healing work, but it really cracked open in that point in time. And I had a message from my mother, a message from God that I was to leave my career. I was a successful business management consulting leader. I had been making the multiple six figures, thought that was fine, right? Until my mother passed. And even going back into work was different, but I could not articulate it, right? But it really was in the midst of that time that I left my career. I went on a self discovery, self healing journey, um, several iterations, and then leaving and starting my own business full time, but really taking time to heal. And it really wasn't until these last few years that I realized that my gift was really around the transition. And it wasn't really just transparently. the past few months, which I've shared with you when we met last year, I still wasn't really there, that my actual mission is around this loss piece. It is around the grief piece. And so that's how I've gotten to where I am today in the work that I do. It is from my own personal experience, but it's also from the certifications and the knowledge and understanding, right, of doing this work. And it's also from recognizing part of the reason why we're connected on this is the gap. It is recognizing that there aren't enough conversations, particularly around this topic, particularly around the diversity, the variety, the complexity, right? If we look at that mosaic you talk about, those different shards of glass in that integration within our lives, but also in the world. So when I look at those three elements, that's where my passion comes from in helping in this. But yeah, that's a bit of my story, a bit of how I've gotten here, and the bit of work. And then I will say is the two main ways that I work is one on one with women. And I have also a community, but it's typically one on one with women. And then I do host retreats. So we talk about those containers. That's where the container usually sits. But yeah, so I'll stop there. But yeah, that's a bit about me, how I serve, and what my story is.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I've heard your story multiple times, but it's always just amazing. Like even when you talk this time about how the privilege that it was for you to
Hmm.
be able to hop on a plane, or the privilege that it was for you to be able to be with her for whatever length of time that was, and how a lot of people who are impacted by grief and loss don't necessarily have some of those options, and that can also add another complexity
Hmm.
to the grief that we experience. um and so I thank you for, bringing that out and highlighting that. And, when I think about the importance of this conversation around grief, I'm a mental health coach. I coach
Hmm.
people every week. And the thing that I notice um in the people that I coach is that men and women alike, is that they're all grieving something.
Yes.
It's just that sometimes they don't know that
Yes.
they're grieving something. And so they'll come to me and they'll say, "Can you help me with this issue?" Like, I'm too irritated with my kids, or I'm too this, or, I don't have time to do this. I don't know how to organize this. I don't, whatever the issue is that they're presenting with. When we start digging into that, they're grieving something. They're grieving something that was, and it could be directly connected to the loss of a human life. But often, as you said, how you work with women who are in some type of major transition, it can be the loss of connection, the loss of a marriage, a relationship, a job. And there's so many complexities to the conversation about grief. And I think the one of the things that I've noticed is that people, one, don't realize that they are grieving something.
Yes.
And then whenever they do kind of accept that, "Oh, yeah, I am. There is there's a loss here, and I
Hmm.
can acknowledge that," then the next step is, "How do I get over this?"
Yes.
I don't wanna feel this. I don't
Yes.
want this. I don't wanna be sad. I don't wanna feel this. And I think I can count I can't even tell you how many times I've said to people, "It's actually normal that you feel that way. It's actually normal that you are struggling right now. I'm not telling you it's gonna last forever, but I need you to acknowledge and be okay. Allow yourself to feel what you feel." And so many times it's such a struggle. It's such.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few
Mhm.
things that you said that were really powerful too that, I've even reflected on, though my mother's loss was my level my pathway into awareness about grief, I would say. To
Mhm.
your point, there are all these other losses and experiences that are beyond, say, death, divorce, separation, right? That in society, we're not really given the opportunity or someone is curious of asking about, right? As I started doing my research and realized that we have like 60 plus different types of losses,
Mm.
right, that we can experience. Um, and they can be as intense or simple, but the reality is that the fact that we don't even talk about loss, right? Like what did you lose? Just that conversation was so eye-opening for me, but also so eye-opening for my clients. So, even for example, we sometimes don't talk a lot about the ones where we've made the decision. So, I often talk about the fact of like, I chose to leave my job.
Mhm.
I never had anybody really talk about like, hey, actually, when you're excited or you choose to do something, you actually can still grieve. I'm choosing to move from Atlanta to LA. But what I knew, I allowed myself a grieving process because it wasn't just about the move. It was about the loss of all the other things to your point, right? Whether that's security, whether that's identity, whether that's when we think of people in marriages or having children, individualism, control, autonomy, like some of these different things that many times aren't brought up. And so, even I just bring that up because sometimes, even in exciting and happy moments, again, both can be true, right? So, the thing that you mentioned, so just from a standard, I hope when someone's listening to this, is perhaps sitting with, is there something you feel like you're losing?
Mhm.
Is there something that maybe you're grieving, or maybe your word is, I'm feeling a little bit sad while I'm still excited,
Mhm.
right? Because I think that standard really starts to just open up the doors of how many things we really haven't been given ourselves the time and space to reflect on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that you mentioned too is we have a society that says, okay, especially if you're dealing with people like, I'm a smart individual, you've helped, here's the mirror, you showed me who I am. Now, how do we fix it? Right? Like it's literally like the microwave, give me the framework, the 5 steps,
Yeah.
the journal prompts, the 5 affirmations so I can go about my day,
Yeah.
right? To do this.
Yes.
Or give me anything I could just cope and just bypass these feelings I'm having because no one's really given me a space to say, you know what? Let's actually just sit with this.
Yeah.
Can we just sit with it? And so I know with you, with the work you do, I think that's what can be so unfamiliar and so uncomfortable because I find that sometimes we're the first place that someone has actually said, we can actually sit here.
Yes.
You actually can feel it without being judged. You actually can feel it and let the tears fall, and we don't have to have a conversation about it,
Mhm.
you know? And so I thank you for allowing me to unpack that. But like that's been the thing I've observed is like, wow, we've gotten so much on autopilot with moving, but also created environments that it's awkward and uncomfortable to feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I know, I'm just like, I'm so absorbed in your words because I'm like, it's so true. And I can almost feel it like palpable when someone can't sit with it. And it's almost like it's unacceptable. It's
Hmm.
unacceptable for me to feel this way. This is wrong. I should be over this. I should be okay.
Mm.
I should all of the shoulds. We should ourselves so
Yeah.
much. I should do this. I should feel this. It should be this way. And I remember I've had many, many losses, unfortunately, in my life, but the one that like when I say it ripped my inside out, I was 28 years old and I was dating someone who I thought I was going to marry, and they were killed in a tragic
Mm.
train accident. And Nicole, I it was like I felt my life was ripped away from me. My future was ripped away from me. And it was like I didn't even have it in my mind to be like, I shouldn't feel this way.
Right.
I couldn't even I couldn't even function. Like, it still brings tears to my eyes because
Mhm.
I remember it felt like life was over. It felt like that I had no future. And I remember that I was just going through the motions of life for like a year. I was just going through I didn't know that. I didn't know I was just going through the motions.
Yeah.
I was living. But when I look back on it and I remember, like, I had one of those aha moments that we often do. And for me, it was, I believe, God speaking to me and saying, "Hey, babe, you cannot keep doing this. You
Mhm.
cannot keep living like this."
Mhm.
And I was isolated. I mean, I was in my home and I was actually living with my parents because I was a caretaker. I'm in that caretaking role and I can kind of lose myself in that as well, which is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But I could lose myself in all of these things and kind of keep moving and keep going, but I was not addressing the fact that my heart had just been shattered in pieces.
Mhm.
And so I when I had that moment of God being like, "Hey, you cannot keep living like this. You you gotta breathe. You gotta get up. You gotta move. You gotta heal. You gotta." And for me, I'm an artist, and so that's what he used. He was like every day. It felt like I was going to the art store. I didn't know what I was doing. I was
Mhm.
like grabbing a paintbrush here and like one paintbrush. I'm like grabbing one paintbrush. I'm grabbing one canvas. I'm grabbing a tube of paint. It was ridiculous, honestly. But at the end of my going to the different stores and grabbing little pieces, I had all of this art stuff out. And I remember this encounter that I had where I just all night just painted and cried
Mhm.
and sang. And that was my kind of a marker in
Yeah.
my journey, was like this pivotal thing of like, okay, I I'm breathing, I'm here. There's life in me, there's hope. And that was for the first time, I think, that I could start to find, I think you said this earlier, I forget what word you used, but it was like the blessing of your mom not being in pain anymore and the sadness. So for me, this was like a sudden thing. So it wasn't like he was sick or anything, but it was like, um, he is he is not he has no struggle in life.
Yeah.
He is where he is and at peace. And
Mhm.
he would not want me
Mhm.
to live life like this. I don't wanna live life like this. There's
Mhm.
so much vision and purpose and passion and love and in my life, and so that was the first time that I was able to kind of express in this and feel, and it's not that I hadn't cried before, but
Yeah.
this time it was more of like an acknowledgement
Mhm.
the depth of everything that I had lost, and now kind of like lifting my head to see what else is there for me in this. So I don't want to, it's kind of weird because it's like I don't really want to use the word excitement because I was not excited at the time. But
Mhm.
as I'm talking about it, it feels like it's like, oh yeah, there's more.
Yeah.
And so I just I really want to be able to um not only with like what you offer and your retreats and the community that I'm building and the retreats I want to do, just be able to have these spaces where people can have these moments of like release,
Yeah,
you know, because they
yeah.
are pivotal. And that really did change the trajectory of everything for me. And um, is a huge reason why I am in this work of helping people
Wow.
bring the pieces of their life together and not bury them.
Yeah. There's so much that you said, all of it is powerful. There's a few things that come to mind that when I was listening to you, um, was that journey of an evolution of your expression, and I think that's another, like, beautiful layer that sometimes isn't always articulated, where I've also had emotion, right? I had emotion, I had the tears, I remember screaming out into the street when they took my mom. However, the evolution of the expression of
Mhm.
my grief changed, right? And we know that there are sometimes the what people call the phases of grief, which technically aren't the stages because there aren't. We have all our different expressions and stages. But that's what I took, and perhaps I'm hoping that someone will listen to this and be like, "Wow, okay, I may have cried. I may have talked to a friend. I may have gone through these things, but there was still something still left." And now that expression comes in art. It comes in dance. It comes in meditation. It comes in perhaps I'm creating a community and I don't have to be the expert, but it's in the expressiveness of that experience. And I hope that that's something that someone takes away because I also think that we have created, whether it was intentional or unintentional, the society of the box of how people heal. And that, if you've expressed this one thing, that maybe you're done, right? And that's not always the case. And the other thing is that we know, particularly around grief, is that there literally can be these seasons, right? You can go through something and seem to be fine 6 months and a year and a half, another expression may come forward. And that's what's coming for me that I hadn't really used before that I'm going to take away from this because I also think there's an element of freedom in that as well, right? This liberation of expression versus I'm going back in the hole of grief or I'm going back in the hole of despair that also creates I think a bit of discomfort or an
Fear.
it's a fear of
Mhm.
unacceptability, some of the things you talked about before of like, "Oh, it's unacceptable because I've emerged and I'm expressing this, and then I have a dip or I have a moment." Perhaps starting to look at these seasons of expression
Mhm.
that gets you to a place that you feel that perhaps the expression is now utilized in a different way. And so that really just sat with me when you were talking. And the last thing I will say is I hope and I know, particularly with the conversations you and I have had, is this is an opportunity to explore, to
Mhm.
go on a different discovery process than perhaps you did before, because it is in that you find perhaps there are other things that you were grieving, perhaps there is other elements of trauma that this is now how they're expressing themselves through this pocket or this window or this door that you've opened. But also at the same time you may find that what you need to heal is different than what you needed before. And that was from me as someone who is driven and resilient and I'm self aware and, personal development, whatever. None of that stuff was working
Mhm.
that I used before and my mother passed. So, a
Mhm.
whole new set of healing tools, modalities, communities, people that I needed to align with started to take shape. And I
Mhm.
think that's another thing that I just wanted to express is that may be the opportunity that you do start to see what you need, what you want, what works for you and doesn't work for you that is different. And being a whether it's uncomfortable, but being open, I would say, because it can be uncomfortable, being open with exploring that. and
Yes.
that it may take some time because the newness of this experience or the depth of the pain may be creating a new opportunity. And that's what I heard from you too. Is like it's not that you haven't had pain. There are certain things that create a different level of depth or intensity that may open you up. And that's where that cracking comes from, right? We've
Yeah.
been open, but that
Yeah.
that
Mm.
cracking or that bursting or the in again, that intensity may be different.
Yes, I love that. I'm so glad you brought that out about just the evolution of the expression of your grief. I was thinking of one woman that I was coaching last week, and she was so almost distraught because she kept crying and she kept going, she's like, I thought that I was over this. And I was like,
Mm,
I mean, over it? I don't know. Like the story that I just told y'all happened in 2005, and
mhm,
when I talk about it, it's still, but it's not the thing that I want to leave people with too is that this the story never changes, the grief never it doesn't change, but I've changed. Like, I've
mhm.
grown. I've I've I kind of grown around the grief so that I can actually carry it and it doesn't feel quite as weighty. Like, I still feel it. I still have the emotion, and I'm not fearful that that means I'm reverting back to, like, those times of where I was kinda living life through going through the motions. That is not it. It's just that there's like you said, it comes in, I think you said, uh,
I think
season. You
seasons,
said
but many times they say waves. Yeah.
waves, yeah, yeah, these waves hit me and, um, you know, I currently live in Little Rock.
Mm,
I met this person when I was in Arkansas before, but I was living in Pennsylvania when the death happened, and I now moved back to Arkansas years and years and years later, and when I moved here this time 2 years ago, it was it because it triggered my
trigger.
mind.
Yes, it activated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Activated it again, and I was very sad. I
Mm,
was very more than I had felt in many, many years about this situation, but it's because I'm back where we met. I'm back in that setting, and it took me to another depth, another level
mm,
of healing, and
mm.
I just had to go through it. I had to allow myself to feel it and to do that. And so, um I hope that anyone listening, just will consider these things for yourself. Hey, honey. Um,
Hey,
I'm
y'all. Hey,
so
Ronnie.
Yes. I'm so thankful for everybody who's been on listening. I am diligently working to create a community and a space. It's not just about grief, but it is about a safe space for women to come, connect, be loved on, and be poured into because we do that for everyone else. And we don't often have those spaces, especially as high achieving women, as leaders, as the mom who is running everything and making sure everybody's schedule is together. There's not often time and space created for us to just sit and feel and be and have the strategies to take care of ourselves well. And so that's what is coming. It's called the Well Collective, and I'm happy.
Yay.
Yes, so stay tuned for that, everybody. But let's see. I wanted to just quickly acknowledge, real quick, navigating life after 40. My friend Ronnie will
Yeah,
be with
Ronnie. Ronnie's the homie.
us.
This my sister.
Yes, she will be with us next week. And
That's awesome.
so excited. She is a gem, a wealth of information and knowledge and encouragement for women in so many different areas. But so I'm excited to talk to her next week. Nicole,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so for sharing your story, for sharing your heart. Is there anything that you have going on, or ways that people can connect with you if they want to stay connected? What
Yes. So, I have several things. I think the greatest thing to share with women. I also have a community that's slightly different if there's an interest. But what I would say is, if there's something about this conversation that you would like to continue in some way that I shared, I know it was a short segment, and you just want to have a call. I offer a free complimentary call. It is less about working with me. It is more about creating an opportunity for you to be seen, loved, and heard. And if that turns into a fit of us working together, great. But that's not really the intent. The intent is to connect. And so if there is something again that was covered that you would like to go further in depth with in your life, if there's some way that I can serve or pour into you in those 30 minutes, I would offer that because again, many times, especially in the world that we're in right now, just having a conversation with someone and saying, "Oh, I get it, sis. I see you. And here's three things that maybe can help you on your path, or maybe this is how you want to connect with the coach that you already have or the therapist you're always already working with," is priceless. And I needed that for myself. So I created it for other women.
Mhm. Awesome. 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 Ah, yes. Oh, yes. They're singing your praises. Take advantage
Oh, thank
I'll take
you.
advantage of the call. Yes, it's amazing. And everybody, I encourage you. I can't see everybody who's on, but thank you for being here. Please stay connected. And if you're needing support, like DM me. I would love to connect with you. If you have any questions or thoughts that this brought up, I would love to, continue the conversation further. But for now, we are going to close it out. And again, thank you so much for joining Leading Through the Cracks, Real Stories, Whole Women, Transformative Leadership. And we will be back next week with another powerful conversation.
Yay.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.